Then tonight we will just try to work on this emotions, that how we can just deal with it in our daily life. So the emotions, in a way, of course, we know because we have it, and we are very rich with that. And the problem is we don't know how to deal with it. So even though there are many different methods, many different kind of the explanations, but based from Buddhism, whether just in general in Buddhism, or including like the Tibetan Buddhism, the Vajrayana, that how we can just deal with it. Of course, there are many different explanations, many levels of explanations. So one thing is that the emotions have basically two categories: general emotions and then afflictive emotions. So general emotion, the sense of kind of emotionally happy or a little bit sad and so forth, those kind of just emotions, which is the part of that feeling that that is nothing that much kind of you have to reject, or you have to be kind of acceptant about that, because it is more or less as a sentient being, where there is a consciousness, where there is a mind. Such kind of emotions are very natural. That there is no way we can just really stop it, or we could get rid of it. That just there is nothing much, kind of it just happens, and also it is not necessarily kind of bad. Then the second one is the afflictive emotions. So the afflictive emotions are something that in general which we really need to deal with that, and because all sorts of just suffering and problem and difficulties, just the whole complete samsaric like panic is just because of the afflictive emotion. And as just like a Buddha's teaching, that we are saying, in generally, like a Tibetan meditation, so where basically saying Tibetan meditation. So how to deal with your just kind of mind or that afflictive emotion? In generally, that where one just have a kind of way, which way you just like follow. So that basically just in two ways. One is which is a Tibetan meditation, that out of that four lines. Tibetan meditation is that whatever soul, whether it is small or big or great or anything, if it is anything kind of negative, whether it is negative, just anything that looks negative or non-virtuous, then one try to just reject that and not to just really involve into such kind of negative thought and negative just verbalization and negative just action. So whether we could involve into any kind of physical action or verbalization or not is just mainly based on our mind. That when we have an afflictive emotion, that then just rest of speech, verbalization and action just naturally come. So that afflictive emotion, that in a way, just somehow when one knows it is just negative, by any means, by its nature negative, by its cause negative, by its fruition negative, and in that way, when one sees it as negative, then just one have to work, to it, try to just abandon or try to not really put into any kind of just action. That is just basically one thing which in a way kind of follows the whole complete teaching, the practice in our day-to-day lifetime, what practice one can do. Even though it is difficult, it's hard. And then the other one is the second one, Gyatso. Whatever it is something virtuous, anything small or big, or if it is virtuous, that which is a kind of virtuous thought, virtuous emotion, and then one try to just more involved into it, and because the virtuous emotion, with that virtuous emotion, whatever you verbalize, whatever you kind of physically act, that naturally just becomes something more virtuous or more positive. So to do that, then it's saying just one's mind should be completely tamed. One's mind should be completely tamed, which means that where one's mind doesn't have all sorts of these afflictive emotions, including all this kind of conceptual thoughts. So that of course it is not just very easy, because how we are so kind of in a way habituated, at the same time as a sentient being, then we have this what is called mind, or the consciousness, and the whatever sort of emotions arise, whatever sort of afflictive emotions arise, it is just the nature of mind, the relative nature of mind. That like how the water, wherever this water, and if there is any kind of like a something bumps up there, then the bubbles of water just naturally water just arises, and then it dissolves, and it arises and it dissolves. So, so similar like that, our mind, just this somehow the afflictive emotions are just afflictive emotions, or general emotions are just always there. So now to deal with that, just according to like according to like a Hinayana, or the first Buddha's sermon of turning the wheel of Dharma, that is mostly just explained, just looking into it, whether that is as explained earlier, whether that is just kind of negative or not. And when it is just kind of a negative emotion, such as like mostly like hatred, just anger, desires, and all these kind of afflictive emotions. And of course we know that it is just kind of anger, or it is just kind of hatred, or it is a kind of jealousy, or that where we know that. So as we know, somehow the part of in the beginning, just what we need is like a watchman, which is called watching our mind. So that part is also many times we miss it, because we already just become busy with all sorts of activities. So when the watchman become busy and they kind of like watching somewhere, and then they kind of somebody just enters there, then some kind of problem happens. So that part in the Shantadeva's text, that Bodhichitta avatar, in that he explains about just where there needs just the watchman, like a watchman, which is called the mindfulness. That every time just we need to have that mindfulness to watch there, whether that oneself is the kind of, just thinking anything which is kind of negative or not. And when we just instantly with the mindfulness, when we recognize it is a negative thought, then we try to deal with it, not to just take into any sort of action. At the same time, try to just try to abandon that. So to not to take action and to abandon that is also, as we know, it is not easy. Because one thing, this our afflictive emotions and general emotions, it is again, so habituated for kind of, countless lifetimes. And on the other hand, we are not paying much attention to our mind. We don't really pay much attention to our mind. We are just mostly kind of, focusing externally, what one has to do, where one has to deal, to whom one has to just, talk, and what one need to just, kind of, accomplish, something. And that way, as one just, continuously working on that, then there are situations, conditions happen, and then according to that, how our mind again, get afflicted. So that part, just to deal with that, then somehow it also needs some sort of which is called the conscientiousness, that Palyul in the Bodhichitta Avatar I explained about this fifth chapter. So fifth chapter, which is called conscientiousness. So every time where you need to have a conscientiousness in a way, again, kind of, very similar to that, like a watchman, what your mind is thinking, what you are verbalizing, what your physically, kind of action is doing. In that way, just how one can, just kind of, watching oneself. And that, example just given in that text, like a, somebody who's just carrying a container, full of, filled up with water, and then have to take from one place to somewhere. And then there is a guard, just who just holds a gun or a like kind of, just sword, and then says, if you split, if you spill one drop of the water, I'm going to shoot you. So then, of course, one has to be just that there is no much choice. One has to be very, very careful, and then just try to kind of take every single step and mind, everything just concentrated in that way, to work properly. That you make sure you don't spill any drop of water. So those parts are in a way we are missing. We don't have like that kind of very scary guard within our being. Not really just watching oneself. If it is something there, that watching oneself, watching one's mind, just somebody like that, immediately going to take an action, whatever just bad emotions that arise according to that kind of a punishment, and whatever good emotion arise, kind of good to just kind of aware, and that kind of just watching that conscientiousness, that which is we don't really maintain much in our kind of just mind. So in that way, it is the for all those just we need lots of training, just mind training, and then for the other hand, then it is just to deal with that kind of this afflictive emotion or any kind of emotion, and then the like looking from the its result point, any kind of afflictive emotion arise, and according to that whatever just kind of action one takes, like whether you just kind of verbalize with that action, with that thought, or whether you just typically do some kind of action, and what is the consequence, what is the just result, whether that is just something kind of virtuous or non-virtuous, or whether it has something kind of harmful for oneself or harmful for somebody, or just that result somehow whether that can just get any kind of benefit for oneself or not. In that way, just from the result point, also if one looks, then there is also a way that one can just be having that kind of mindfulness and the conscientiousness to just really guard one's mind, that is not to just give rise to any kind of afflictive emotions, or not to just get afflicted in that way. So those are more in a kind of like a common just based on like for noble truth teaching, and in general that whatever we consider as afflictive emotions or kind of bad thoughts. So then other than that, more like according to the kind of Mahayana, about the bodhisattva path and practice, then still that just those are still important, that where one needs mindfulness and conscientiousness, and then upon that just kind of training into one's mind, just always based on that kind of intention, looking into that intention, what kind of just intention naturally which arise, and then based on that what sorts of intention one should really cultivate. On that in a way one have to just have to have kind of training and understanding, and then according to that just transform the intention into something more positive in generally, where based on that any kind of intention in related with compassion, just a sort of like based on compassion we also have some sorts of emotions, but those are relatively still okay, such kind of emotions, and then sense of being kind of loving and just kind, and just looking to just do something, anything that is beneficial, and from more of the positive quality side, looking into it, and then one try to concentrate one's mind to just guide and to direct with that kind of just intention what one can just really deal with one's just emotion, any sort of kind of that emotion arise, how one can just transform into a more kind of positive way. So then so those are kind of like that in the sutra, there are all those applied as kind of just antidote, but still it is just until one has enough study into these kind of facts, and one could really know cause and effect of those emotions, where one can experience all about that, then there is some possibility one can just one feel like to work on it. When one doesn't just have enough kind of just education or study or kind of knowledge on it, then it is maybe more difficult to really deal or work on in that way. So then more in a common way, just we have all sorts of just emotions in generally just arising. So then according to that, just if based on this just Buddhist teaching, like how it is explained in the words of my perfect teacher, that whenever sort of kind of thought arise, the based on the, more like from the absolute, true nature of, mind. Whenever any kind of, emotion or afflictive emotion just, arrives, then instead of being, emotional, and instead of acting according to that, afflictive emotion or whatever, instead of that, try to look into it, just even you feel kind of, just happy. And if you really look into what is just, happiness, a sense of, happiness, emotion, instead of just kind of, expressing and kind of, just more kind of, just feeling and more looking, after that as a kind of, just it's the appearance. Rather than that, if you look into, when you feel kind of, happy, and then if you look, what is the happiness? Just what I am just really feeling. And if you look into that kind of, sense of that, emotion, that way, just somehow you, in a way, just, you realize that there is no any concrete, solid, inherently existence of what is called just kind of, emotion as happiness or emotion as, suffering. Because, we like when we are happy, and we don't like when we are, kind of suffering. But as an emotion, there is no any difference. Happiness is also an emotion, and suffering is also an emotion. And when we, kind of, with the happiness, emotion, when we get too excited, also it causes the kind of, problem, because then again it just, kind of next stage, transforms into some sort of, kind of, when the, happiness emotion fades away, then there is some sort of, suffering or sadness or some kind of problem. And then when the, suffering experience, suffering kind of, emotion just, happens, that in a way, just, if you again just look into it, then as a suffering, there is no anything kind of, inherent or kind of, just concrete, solid, that which is kind of very powerful, that which is kind of, torturing you. There is no anything kind of physical. There is no anything kind of, a very strong entity that which really attacks you when you look into it. And when you, in that way, if you look into it, then, when you just experience or suffering is also just mere feeling. There is no anything very concrete or solid in that way. So that also which helps to, kind of deal with that kind of, suffering emotion, and where one not necessarily have to be just, kind of so depressed because of, that suffering. And at the same time, just, that as a suffering emotion, one don't have to just, so worried and so emotional and so depressed, because that is also a just, impermanent thing. Anytime, any moment, again, kind of, suffering emotion also can, fade away. So that is also one way of just kind of looking into it, whether it is, a happiness emotion or suffering emotion, looking into it, try to just, really see anything kind of, very concrete, solid or not. Because, many things that which we could not deal and then get depressed or too excited, where we fall into extremes. If because we are thinking, happiness also just truly existing, really existing, inherently existing, and where we just, kind of like look into it, just, and grasping, have, attachment and grasping in that way. And when it goes away, then there just happens that kind of suffering. And suffering is also, we just feel depressed because we think this is kind of suffering is really, kind of, inherently or, externally and kind of, truly existing. And where we think it is just really there. And that is why then, one could not just, deal with that and depress, and then, just when one could not find some solution how to deal with that, and then, end up with so much depression, and then also, kind of doing all sorts of things, such as like, kind of eating, or, eating drugs, or like, alcohol, because thinking, oh, if I just, have that drug, then maybe just, these suffering emotions, maybe not going to, just experience in that way, so I can just get relief. Or just, if I drink, alcohol, again I get intoxicated, and then, just, I may don't have to just, feel that way, and that way just, kind of very, very, temporary, and at the same time, which is not a real antidote. And it is just, causing more problem for oneself. How one gets, addicted with the alcohol, how one gets addicted with the, drugs, and also just many other sorts of things, now in the, in this, world, with all these, scientific discoveries and scientific inventions, so many kind of, things, and then end up with that, and then after some time one could not, handle with that, and then just it become more than, kind of more, it become more worse than those, just emotions. So those are in a way just, how we can just look into it, and then based on like, just the mind in relation with the just, emptiness. If we, again, it is also same thing, if we have, just enough understanding about the, the nature of life in a way, nature of life, as a, just samsara, as a sentient being, that all sorts of, the emotions are possible, all sorts of afflictive, emotions are possible. According to that, all sorts of, sufferings and problems, all these are just, possible. In that way, just, knowing the truth, and then, just at the same time, just, where one just, try to, in a way, just kind of, try to tame one's mind, whatever sorts of, emotions or afflictive emotions arise, then kind of, just telling oneself, oh, this is the nature of, mind, this is the nature of life, this is the nature of, kind of the samsara, this is, possible to happen to anybody, just like oneself, and like, anybody can just, happen in this way. One don't have to be too, emotional, one don't have to be too depressed, one don't have to be just, worrying too much. In that way, one have to work with one's own mind and with one's own kind of just, emotion. Just in a way, just kind of telling oneself to just take it easy. Don't make a big deal, out of that. Just, there is a way you can just, when you try to, relax your mind, and when you try to stabilize your mind, and not falling into kind of, extremes, and, just try to balance yourself, and then, just based on that, and then, kind of try to remember, all those teachings, like looking into it, just, what is the just, benefit of being kind of, becoming too emotional or too depressed. Of course, one just look into it, that there is no any benefit. Being just, depressed, it also doesn't just, help. But it is funny. Sometimes people say that, oh, just, if I express my emotion, then it just goes away. And when I try to hold on it, then it doesn't just really go, and it got kind of suppressed. And so that part just express and let it go. Then it is just okay, whatever just emotions just express, and then after that let it go. And at the same time, just the emotion it is not really a suppressing. From the Buddhist point of view, based on all this Buddha's teaching, is just try to look into it. Try to look into one's own mind and look into its kind of nature. Like for example, like kind of hatred, and just somehow the hatred is a kind of just emotion, and more of afflictive emotion. So then as you look into it, that the hatred just from where it is just arising, what is the real source of that hatred? Does it have any source, any cause, any condition? In that way. And at the same time, the hatred emotion itself, if one look into it, what sort of kind of shape it has, what kind of color it has, what kind of substance it has, how it looks like. So those are nothing really just looking outside. It is just more or less contemplating oneself when the hatred arrives, and then instead of just kind of expressing something negative to somebody, or expressing just or kind of acting physically a kind of hateful act, instead of that, if you look into it, from where this hatred is arising, from your brain, or from your throat, or from your stomach, or from your hand, and from which part of your body. And then when it arrives, how it really looks like. Does it really have a kind of shape? Does it really have any kind of color, or form, or any substance? So in that way, if you really look into the hatred emotion, then the truth is that all this mind and mental thoughts and conceptual thoughts, and then whatever it is called emotions and afflictive emotions, there doesn't really have anything very concrete or just solid or inherent existence in them. It is just the nature, how that mind, which has that kind of potential to give rise to all this kind of thoughts, that which in reality it is just kind of display of the mind. And when you just look into it, every single aspect of the just the mind, the emotions, when you look into it, then it just kind of dissolves into the mind. Like water bubble arrives, some bubbles are just kind of there, and when you touch it, it poops, kind of just dissolves there, and then another kind of bubbles arise. And then if you really just think, oh, this is a beautiful bubble, and you try to just touch it, and then it pops and dissolves. There is no anything concrete solid. Same like this, our mind, the emotion, this whatever sorts of emotions that ever arising, if you just kind of contemplate in that way or try to look into that way, then naturally it dissolves. And most of the time, we are not really doing that way. We are not looking into it. We are just kind of, we are become like a messenger or like a worker or like a servant to all those emotions. And then we have been just following each and every single glance of the emotions. And then according to that, we've been purpleizing. Whatever sorts of emotion arise, we purpleize. And whatever sorts of emotion arise, according to, we put into kind of physical action. And that way, there are just many ways that where we cause kind of problem. And there are very, very, very less that anything that which we purpleize and anything that which we kind of put into action that could be something beneficial or kind of just something positive or something virtuous, because that to be just to give rise to some sort of positive emotions, kind of virtuous emotions, are for that we need to pay kind of attention. We need to have kind of sense of concentration, sense of mindfulness, sense of all those consciousness. Otherwise, randomly, mostly kind of just more negative thoughts, negative emotions are just arising. And according to that, whatever the purpleization action we do, then naturally it becomes something non-virtuous. It is same like that. For instance, if you just plant the poison seed, then naturally whatever it grows, it is poison. And when our mind, the emotions, when it is negative, something which is negative or non-virtuous, then it's kind of action, and whatever it just purpleization happens mostly kind of just negative, like a poisonous. So in one way, just that where just based on like this, in the Madhyamik, like Madhyamik avatar, the Chandrakirti's text, where it just explains about just the emptiness nature. And that emptiness nature is not just merely a philosophy. It is not merely just only thing to study. It is not just merely a kind of just an interesting topic. And at the same time, it is not a kind of dogma or a kind of somebody's imagination, but it is the truth. That where we hear about emptiness, like emptiness of mind, the emptiness of emotion. So, which means when you really try to look into it, then it dissolves into emptiness, because it doesn't have anything that characterizes nature from its from its nature. So when we carefully look into it, then it helps to dissolve. And when we doesn't look into it and then acting according to that, then it is just always causing kind of problem. And many of times we also do realize later whatever when we do, oh, this is just I should not have said that, I should not have kind of done that, I should not have act in that way, just where one kind of repeats. But sometimes like words which you have expressed, there is no way you can just bring it back. Once you express, it is just gone. And in one way, the words which you express, it is just gone. In a way, again, it is also dissolved in emptiness. But then, how our mind, kind of just holds that word with certain kind of meaning, just looking into it, it is something real, something kind of concrete, something really existing. And that way, then just we try to deal with that, just giving rise to another emotion. The emotion, any kind of just emotion. And then, sometimes it also, many times I think, cause lots of just problem. Because the main thing is how we, kind of think everything is just, real. Kind of, everything is just taking it very seriously. Everything is just very real. So, so that part, just when instead of that, if one look into, just each and every, kind of thought where one, always really need to have that kind of just, mindfulness to watch one's thought, and then, like looking into it, just that which really helps to get into one's own true nature of mind, where we are talking about absolute true nature of mind. In Buddhism, that where you hear from like the Sutrayana, like Mayana, all the way to the great perfection. It explains that in generally that all phenomena are emptiness in nature. Moreover, this all these thoughts are emptiness in nature. And that just when we could not just experience that emptiness nature, then it doesn't work as antidote. That is just a problem. We hear emptiness, we know some level, or just about emptiness, but we could not just really experience emptiness, what that really means. And when we could not just experience the actual emptiness nature, so that is why how many times one hears emptiness, or even one knows about the emptiness, then that the emptiness nature itself becomes an emptiness antidote. It doesn't just kind of seems like working. Even one thing, oh, everything is emptiness, I should not be worrying about that, everything is solution, why I have to be just so kind of depressed in that way. And that is just a kind of, we are saying words and thinking about it, but we are not experiencing. It is like, oh, it is so hard, it's okay, I'll just get some ice cream. Or just kind of cold drink, I'll be fine, just it's fine. And just thinking that, somehow when one just tries to feel it, it really helps. But just thinking in that way, it doesn't just really help, because still the heat is there. So same like this, kind of all these antidotes, whatever it is explained, somehow in Buddhism, just looking into the nature of that, the emotion, as something negative and something kind of, something positive, something which is virtuous or non-virtuous. And then, dealing with that, we are thinking of, if it is just, more of virtuous, kind of virtuous emotions, by any means we need more of those. As it says, Gyatso Soparcha, which means, that you should do, as much as of the virtuous, accumulation. Because the virtuous thought, virtuous verbalization, virtuous action itself is the only cause of happiness and a cause to reborn in the upper realm, and also cause to when it is just influenced by the right intention and with the kind of merit and dedication, then it also becomes cause to liberate from the suffering of samsara and also to attain enlightenment. And that is just by its nature. And anything that which is kind of non-virtuous thought, then it always just cause anything that which is virtuous, non-virtuous mental action, verbalization, physical action. Whether we really just know or not, or whether we believe or not, and that is the truth and that is the reality. And that part, in a way, just kind of not having enough to study and not being gone deep into that kind of just nature. That is why most of the time we are just ignoring, even it is kind of non-virtuous thought or non-virtuous verbalization and non-virtuous physical action, because we don't see the consequences immediately like that. You just park, you park your car where you are not supposed to park, and then immediately just police comes and gives you a ticket, and then one just really feels that, oh, I should not have done that, and maybe I will not do this again. And when just police didn't come there, you become just kind of fortunate. Oh, just I thought there, police didn't come, I got escaped this time. So then that way you get habituated, becoming more optimistic in that way. Oh, last time I did that, I was fine. Maybe this time will be fine. And maybe just parking somewhere, just you are hurry in the parkway, and then again maybe just you can be fortunate for second time. Second time, and maybe just somehow police is not there, and you just come out and you, oh, I'm fine, nothing to get, oh, good, I'm lucky. And then one gets more, kind of just habituated doing that. But somehow, just one day, you will be just, catch up by that. So until you get a punishment, kind of like a ticket, real ticket, till that one just never just stop doing that. That similar thing is just, all sentient beings we are doing. One time just being kind of, giving rise to epileptic emotion, and then, kind of doing something, causing problem or just, whatever, and then one feel like, oh, I was okay. Oh, this time just, there is no anything kind of, just consequences, no anything result, so just, what it really matters. And that way, then, just like the Nagarjuna's text also, explains about that. Just the karma ripening doesn't happen like a just kind of, instant, like a sword, cutting a kind of, just vegetable. It doesn't happen. And that is why, just we don't see the consequences immediately, and in that way we are just kind of, ignoring many times. And as we ignore, and then, just eventually it has, its consequences, any kind of just suffering or problem, that happens. And then only at that time we remember, oh, I should not have done this. And by that time already it is, in a kind of, fruition. And then there is nothing much that one can just, kind of, do, or rather than just, really bear it. So those are kind of the fields where we can just, kind of look into it and try to deal, just rather than just instantly expressing whatever kind of, emotion arise, try to look into it, or this is, just negative, emotion, one should not be just, doing. And that way, just, where we need, again, that kind of, as I explained earlier, mindfulness, conscientiousness. And then, even with that, just kind of looking as its, nature and as its consequences, and at the same time, just more or less, we all never want to have any kind of, problem, any kind of suffering. So then we really have to just, know what is the real cause of all this kind of, suffering and problem. Including, just all these, emotions. So if we really don't want to experience all this kind of depression and suffering and problem, then we should know what is, its cause. That cause is our mind, the emotion itself. And that more or less, all this afflictive emotion. So just when we know that, somehow it needs a kind of, just lots of, in a way, kind of lots of experiment, examining, investigating, when you give rise to any kind of, negative thoughts, and how you really feel, and what is your kind of, action, and what is, its energy. Does it really just make anything peaceful, or joyful, or happy, or not? And if we just kind of, try to, like, do some experiment on that, and when one know, or just when I give rise to this kind of afflictive emotion, it always causes problem. And then if we are just somehow, smart and clever, then, when we know that this is something, just always bring some problem, or, kind of, just suffering, or kind of, negative results, or bad consequences, then, we should, try to work with our mind, try to avoid that. That is just, the actual way how we can deal with those, emotions, try to really work hard. Oh, this is not good, I should not really just, kind of doing, or, kind of, just following this kind of, action with this kind of, just emotion. And that way one has to just, kind of, like, work with one's mind. It is nothing much that with the, kind of external or, physical. It is just, enlightenment is also in our mind. Samsara is also in our mind. And the Buddha, is also in our mind. The Devu is also in our mind. Just all this, kind of happiness is also in our mind, and all sorts of suffering is also in our mind. So it is a matter of how you could just, deal with that, just mind, which is the thought, which is the, the emotion, where you say, emotion, and whatever that, emotion, that which is the, kind of the devil activity, we always try to abandon that, try to avoid that. Whatever sort of, the emotion, that which is the, kind of activity of, just the Buddha, enlightened being, we, somehow, try to develop that. So that part is just, kind of really based on what sort of, thought you just, give rise to it. And that, just however it is, whether it is virtuous or not non-virtuous, that part, it's kind of like a most basic, importance in our day-to-day lifetime, and also for the next lifetime. If we train our mind to just, watch properly, if anything is kind of, negative, not to involve in that, and anything that which is virtuous, try to engage into that. That is in a way kind of, long run, dealing with one's, daily emotions. it is a long run. So, that as one kind of, just work in that way, just eventually, one will just, experience all those, kind of, the happiness and the positive results. And if we don't work in that way, then there is nothing much we can just, really deal with our just kind of, emotions. Then immediate results, for immediate results to just, something like, any kind of emotion arise you want to capture. Then as I explained according to the, just mind, just, looking into it, whatever just, emotion arise, look into it and try to look, its nature. About that kind of, just form or, shape or color. If you really look into it, then, just there is no anything just kind of, inherent existence as a kind of, solid emotion. Because its, relative nature or absolute nature of the emotion, whatever, emotion, it is really, emptiness in nature. And that, just in one way, like it seems like, just the Mahayana Sutra, about emptiness. As even you go higher into this, kind of Dzogchen, the great perfection, where it is called, Chekche, this Chekche meditation. Chekche is, which means by, instantly cutting through. Instantly cutting through all this kind of emotions. How one can just, kind of directly cut through that. And that is just, instantly looking into each and every, not each and any moment, whatever kind of just emotion arise. If you just look into it, from where it is just arising, and where that thought is just, kind of that emotion is abiding, where it goes, this arrives, and there, it is there for a moment, and then it is just gone. Again another arrives, it is there and gone. And that is what, all about the nature of the emotion. All sorts of emotions arise in that way, it is there for a moment and then it is just gone. Nothing is like a, permanent. There is no any emotion which is kind of, permanently existing and permanently just, arising. Only thing where we think it is just always there, where we look like, it is just the permanent, is just only there is a continuum of that kind of, similar kind of emotion. And that is also when you get, just habituated of, kind of experiencing such kind of, emotion, then that when continuum happens, then, one thinks it is just always there, it looks like permanent. Just same like, any other river Khenchen. And that which is just, kind of flows. Every single moment that river is flowing. But we, somehow that, still just think that that river which we saw last year, this year again you see, you think this is the same river. But that, just the river, the each and every single parts and particles of that drops of water, it has already gone into just ocean. Not even tiny bit of it just left there. It is completely new. But there is the continuing flow that we think it is just same thing, same kind of permanent, same like ourselves. We see last year and this year again we think, oh, we're just, oh, I thought this, I know this person. We think, it is just same person. It is not same. It is just there are lots of changes. Lots of changes have gone within one's, physical body. Every single molecule every single breath, every single movement. And then our mind just, not even a second, it is not same. It is just, kind of change also. But it is just, the continuum is so fast, where we think it is just kind of, one, and also just kind of, permanent. Same like that, a incense with the kind of, fire on the top. And then if we just kind of turn this way, we feel like, oh, there is a circle of fire. It is completely illusion. There is no circle of fire at all. But the movement of that fire from here to here, it moves so fast. And that is why we see like a circle. And that which in a way it is a kind of more or less direct perception. A circle of fire, it is just like direct perception. And we think it is just kind of, like a somehow true. But there is no, circle, there is no a circle of fire. When that dot of that fire, when it is here, it is not here. When it is here, it is not here. When it is here, it is not here. So, means we could not see, every single movement of that, impermanent nature. We could not see. And similar like that, this our physical body and this, external world, all this, just everything, every single, just second, every single moment, all those kind of changes are happening, but it is so subtle that we could not just perceive. So similar like that, all those kind of changes are constantly happening, which is part of the relative nature, which is the relative truth. So even we just think in that way to deal with our emotions. Every single moment of that emotion, they are not as a one whole emotion, something very solid, concrete in that way. And if we could see that truth, every single moment of that emotions are impermanent in nature, and they are not existing as something kind of a whole emotion. That is the best way to deal with the just emotion. If we realize that, at any moment we can get rid of those emotions, because we are realizing the truth. We are just kind of having the direct perception of that. The truth, the nature of the, just every single, just thought or emotion. We are just kind of realizing that. And when we could just, know that, then the emotions naturally just kind of, in a way kind of, dissolve. It is a matter of just realizing that truth. And the moment we realize the truth, just there is the kind of the result, the liberation. Liberation is there, and that kind of knowing the truth is also our mind, part of our wisdom, and what we are knowing, the emotion, is also our mind, and the action that which knows. By that perceiver, our mind, that which perceives that the emotion is impermanent in nature or emptiness in nature, and that action is also our mind. So there, object, subject, action, all three is in our mind. Yeah. I think like a, like a this kind of the magnet or like just kind of the energy, that where we talk about energy, that the action which is done and how it kind of relates with the just the object and the kind of one object and another object, and then the in between that kind of just energy or like kind of like gravitation, that all of it is just done by that kind of invisible energy, invisible kind of gravitation, just that which just kind of does everything. So similar like that just the emotion itself is also our mind. And that which realizes is, kind of, truth is also our mind. And that which applies that kind of method is also just, our mind. And so in that way, when we know, then emotion, the emptiness, impermanence, and the action, they are not separate. They are not separate. It is just only matter of realizing that nature. And when we don't realize that nature, then we don't have any solution or method to deal with emotion. And when we just kind of somehow know the truth, and when we know the truth in a way, just realizing that nature, then the emotions are immediately got ceased. And moreover, like kind of realizing that such as like emptiness nature of the mind, emptiness nature of the mind, which is the absolute truth. And if we realize that, it is the most powerful and most fastest and also most, in a way, easiest way to deal with all sorts of afflictive or emotions, any other emotions. But even though it is a kind of very effective and very powerful and very fast, but still just somehow we need, at least still we need some training, kind of mind training, just, and to go through that kind of just mind training, then we also need, again, just relatively we need that those mindfulness, just instantly watching into one's kind of emotions and thoughts, how it looks like, and looking into it. So that which part is like the Buddhahood without meditation. It goes through kind of analytical, analyzing. Analyzing is like kind of directly applying some method, just directly into it. It is like just kind of electric saw, cutting the wood, all the way it is going from that, from one edge to another edge, just all the way thorough. And then it just cuts down and they fall down the tree. So similar like that kind of the method, just like the texture, cutting through, that when we just instead of kind of like with the emotion and multiplying the emotion and contemplating on emotion, and then emotion is kind of just when we feed the emotion, then emotions become bigger and bigger. And after some time we cannot just control our emotions. We could not control our emotions, which means we could not control our mind. And when we could not just control our mind, then it falls into some kind of extreme. Just some extreme. So that part where just instead of getting habituated, giving rise to the same kind of emotion, and instead of multiplying the emotion, and then instead of just always just always giving rise to that just emotion, and those which just develops the emotion, it doesn't really help. Then even one could not apply, or even one could not deal with like emptiness nature. Emptiness nature. Then that other ways to deal with the just emotion, like to try to transform the emotion. Like you have a headache, and then instantly the headache emotion, you just try to transform into like compassion, like really twisting or just changing. It's the appearance, like the appearance of the emotion as hatred, you just change into compassion. Or that emotion as a kind of like a anger or jealousy, then it just change into some sort of loving kindness. And even one could not just transform in that way. Then just like a thing, just try to like ignoring any kind of emotion that which is kind of negative and bothering oneself. When that arises, then immediately just like ignore that. Try to just try to don't pay attention. Just try to forget that, and just like when somebody just is there, calling you, and then if you ignore one time, and then 2 times, 3 times, and then after that, just that person also, I think, oh, this is not going to work, and then naturally it stops, because just keep ignoring. And similar like that, any kind of just these kind of thoughts arise. If you ignore 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and work with that, then those emotions also, somehow, it will frequently doesn't arise. It just kind of becomes less and less and less, and then later it just fades away. That is also just one way to just kind of deal with the emotion, but those are just a kind of just very simple method that which is not really kind of be helping to to completely get rid of those emotions. It just helps for temporarily, and so still just for the time being it has been ignored, but again just after a while it may just arise. But knowing the truth of the emotions, such as like emptiness nature, that which if one can just really deal with such kind of the emptiness nature, the applying that method, and through that, in case if you really get rid of that emotion, including afflictive emotions, it will be just gone forever, and will never ever just bother, or never ever will just give rise to it again, such kind of just emotion. And that part just same like that the other method which like when one instantly could not just understand the emptiness nature, then that same thing kind of analyzing, applying that method of analyzing, just that where is that just the emotion, how it looks like, just try to look into its kind of nature, how it looks like, shape or color or form, and just when you any kind of emotion or thought, when you look into it, then there is no anything just concrete, solid, truly existing. And when you just do with that, after some time you will have some sense of kind of insight into that nature of that. Or actually there is no such thing as what is called emotion or afflictive emotion. When one just really kind of get a much clear insight into it, and then path that to really experience and to really actualize with that, then one needs some sort of meditation. In that kind of just like a emptiness nature, or in that kind of that non-existence of that just emotion, and then sitting into meditation, like concentrating on it, and concentrating on that nature, that which helps to sustain that that true nature. When that sustains that true nature, and where one could abide more longer period of time in that vacancy of that emotion, then just naturally there will be just less emotion arising within one's kind of being, and moreover this the afflictive emotion, the worst part of the just problem that which we are experiencing is mainly the afflictive emotions. And other than kind of normal emotions just being expressing and generally feeling, it just doesn't just really cost much, and it is also kind of the practice or applying some sort of method is also later part. Just in the beginning, that the most important thing just to really deal with the emotion is that the afflictive emotion, because the afflictive emotion just really kind of cause all sorts of problems in our just kind of life, within that the whole complete cause of getting rebirth in samsara is because of afflictive emotion. And then each and every what the kind of movement in our daily life, whatever we are kind of going through, all sorts of emotions and depression, it's just mainly because of that afflictive emotion. And when we could not just get rid of it, then of course we just give rise to all these negative emotions that which continuously become a cause to reborn in samsara and experience all this kind of just suffering and so forth. So those are just in a way explained in Buddhism, just in very detailed. And the only thing is we need kind of time to really study on it. And then, to just really, in the beginning, just we really need to have that knowledge, sense of understanding. The afflictive emotions, what that is really causing, how and which way is causing, problem and suffering to, in our life and in our kind of, future life, how it is just causing. Like same thing like the science do all sorts of experiments, and we can also do experiment on that part, and it is difficult because it is very subtle. Mind, just the mind and all these thoughts and emotions. And we can also do experiment on that path, and it is difficult because it is very subtle. Mind, just the mind and all these thoughts and emotions. Same thing like the science do all sorts of experiments, and we can also do experiment on that path, and it is difficult because it is very subtle. Mind, just the mind and all these thoughts and emotions are sorts of kind of feeling. There is no anything like a kind of just the like poison or some external thing, just take it out or cut it out and throw it away, or just burn into fire, just something like nothing like kind of external substantial object. So that is why it is always much more difficult to deal with it, because it is very subtle. So that is why just it really needs lots of mindfulness, and then conscientiousness, and with that need the kind of diligence, diligently working on it, and then also need perseverance, and then to just to be just really kind of just get into its kind of truth. Then that they also need meditation. Concentrate where one's mind be concentrated. For anything. Like concentration is just it's kind of the mind training. And a very concentrated mind can just really do lots of things, and also more kind of perfect way, including I think like sports, martial arts, really need lots of concentration, and where need lots of awareness with the concentration, and awareness, just around oneself. And that is all just is the game or the kind of display of one's mind. And when one can just be aware and concentrated in that way, then there is a way one can just deal with everything. And one moment one just got confused, and then the whole complete problem just starts. Like with one single kind of just cause, just, and then just rest of all just like all this kind of the mathematical calculation, mathematics, or like algebra, just if you make one just kind of number, and then your just whole result is just kind of a kind of wrong result, and then you have to trace back where you did that kind of wrong calculation. You have to go back all the way until you just get to that point where you got confused, or where you kind of mess up. So just so for all this just needs lots of concentration, sense of awareness. Even all this kind of relative activity. And then of course to deal with one's mind, to deal with one's emotion, something which is non-substantial, something which is that kind of just in one way not any kind of physical thing, and that really have to have lots of concentration. To deal with all sorts of emotions. So that is why in one's day-to-day lifetime, where one's mind needs to have some sense of concentration or awareness. that what one needs to just do every single moment of the kind of just time. And the most important is there is no anything like future. In reality, there is no future. Future is always future. We have nothing to do with future. And past is just past. It is just gone. We cannot just bring back that what is just gone. It is just gone. There is no way just, thousand millions causes condition may assemble. We cannot bring back what is just that is past. It's just gone. So only just what we really have left is just only the present. The present. So anything, whatever we are doing, is just always dealing with the present moment. If we are eating, we are eating now. We ate yesterday, it doesn't help. We had all those fun, yesterday and before. It doesn't help, just right now. And tomorrow food, which doesn't just help. That tomorrow food is just still kind of non-existent. It doesn't help. So, and even just say, okay, 1 hour later you are going to get some food. That next just kind of little bit better. Okay, after 1 hour just I can get some food. So it doesn't really matter. Just I should be just be patient. Other than that, it doesn't really help. So real thing is when you are in front of the food. Or ice cream or pizza. And then just even you are in front of that food or ice cream, it doesn't also help. You have to really eat it. So it is just same thing that how we deal with our present mind. Not just caught up into all this kind of imagination of future. Oh, this may happen, this may happen, this may happen, this may happen. In one way, just lots of kind of the relative life. People just kind of plan all this engineer, science, doctor, and all sorts of. They just plan and then kind of have something scheduled and then try to work in that way. But that just planning is just okay. And when according to that plan, what oneself is working is every the present day. Nobody just really works in the future. So that whatever just plan, whatever one has, kind of schedule one has, and that time when it comes in the present moment, and then there is how we kind of just things are working, and that way in one way there is that continuum from past to the present and present to the future, and then future to the kind of present and present to the past. There is a kind of continuum of that where we think it is just kind of same thing and so forth. But mind is still much more subtle than that. So every single moment of just the present moment, if you have that mindfulness and the conscientiousness and then the concentration to deal with your emotions, and then that is the only way how you are kind of really going to deal with that, because the present moment is the cause and source of all sorts of our future. So if we really want a better future, a better just kind of just success in the future, then this present moment, that mind, one have to just really train that how one can just deal with all those kind of just emotions. And for that, to deal with that present moment of emotion, and then the present moment of antidote, just applying that antidote, and the most effective and most the powerful is just looking into its nature, looking into the nature of just the emotion, and then realizing it's just just nature of that the truth, nature which has two. One that the nature of mind, nature of emotion, where there is some sense of kind of the awareness, some sort of sense of experience, awareness, and at the same time that just sense of awareness, sense of experiencing, sense of just kind of clarity, that which when you really look into it, again there is no anything concrete, solid like which is called hatred, or anger, or jealousy, or even pride, or desire, or ignorance. So in reality, nothing really kind of truly inherently kind of those things are not really existing. When one look into one's mind, and that when we somehow just we need to recognize that. If we recognize that, then there is a liberation. And that is the just most powerful and the best way, and the best way to deal with the kind of emotions. And then also there are so many different methods, and that which is merely a kind of method that which is applied to just kind of to really just know the truth, as it is just given in these including or inside Vajrayana, the daily practice, where you just think of the visualizing the deity. So when your mind, when you are when any kind of just emotion arise, or moreover afflictive emotion arise, and to deal with that, if you just started visualizing the deity, or deity is somebody who is enlightened, perfected, and then just something very pure, and then when you just think of that qualities of enlightened, the embodiment, and when one just mind become busy with that, the emotions also can be just gone. So that is also a way, method how one can just deal with the deal with the emotions. And then also just concentrating on just a mantra. Instead of even though there are many relative methods, relatively just when one has so much kind of emotion, kind of sadness or depression, and then just get involved to some kind of art, kind of creating a art, drawing art or creating art, a kind of form, and try to work one's mind is there, just to deal with something, and then slowly one mind can become busy with that, and then one can just get rid of that emotion. Or even just all this kind of art, drawing art, sculpture art, kind of the form art, kind of creating things, and even just thinking about even just very very simple way to deal with all those emotions, to just let it go, thinking how somebody makes a vanilla ice cream, what that really needs, how much sugar or how much vanilla and how much, what kind of just kind of looking into that kind of the recipe and all those kind of things, and that also helps, just very temporarily. When mind becomes just busy with that, it helps to get rid of that, emotion. But it is just all temporary. It doesn't just really heal oneself. So for just really healing, then just one have to just know the just based on these Buddhist teachings about just the emptiness, or even just visualizing deity, or even just concentrating one's mind into the deitic mantra. Of course you can just to deal with the emotion, you can also play music. It also helps, or just kind of guitar or piano or any other kind of music, or just listen to a song, or kind of something that which also just with a kind of distraction way, dealing with your emotions. But again, it is just temporary. So instead of that, even you kind of concentrate your mind on a kind of deity and mantra and rotating, and if you just try to concentrate there, and then when your mind gets involved there, and then it helps to just get rid of that emotion. And those are also kind of methods. But as I said earlier, more real direct to get into kind of some sense of just realization and liberation is really just watching into the mind itself, watching into the emotion itself, whatever emotions arise, and looking into it. And if as you really look into it, properly, and kind of going through an analytical meditation, just that there is no way any sort of emotion can just really kind of just in a concrete solid way just that could be arising, abiding there. And then also compassion, loving kindness, when one's mind try to concentrate into those, also a method that which helps to deal with those emotions. And then even one could not just kind of go through all this kind of just could not apply this kind of method. Then even just to kind of to empty one's mind, just like a kind of walking into kind of empty space, just natural empty space, just thinking about that empty space, and then gaze in the empty space and just abide there. And when mind kind of think that one's thoughts and emotions and all those just where you gaze in the empty space is kind of dissolving just there. All those thought emotions just let it be dissolved there. And even one just think in that way, it also helps. It is also a method to deal with that emotion. But still, those are kind of temporary methods. So the best way is just really knowing the kind of the truth, the emptiness nature, and then kind of looking into it, just from where it is arising and where it abides, where it dissolves. And when one just really look into those kind of every detail, and then just one will know the truth, because that is the absolute truth or absolute nature of mind itself is just always in that way. And we never just kind of look in that way, and that is why we could not just deal with our emotions, and then we end up with so many kind of just many negative things. So yeah, then we other than that, even just when one has so much depression, so much problem, and emotions are very strong. And then in Buddhism, there is what is called root and lineage master prayer, like just the deities, supplication prayers to the like Buddha Dharma Sangha, or the deity prayer, and the like a Guru Yoga, like this root and lineage master prayer, and then concentrating into those prayers that which also help to kind of just get rid of those emotions, because if one's mind fully concentrated into those objects of refuge with a sense of devotion and sincerity, and mind becomes just somehow one's mind becomes pure. Mind becomes pure even for a moment. Instantly there flows the blessing. And just to flow the blessing and to really have all those kind of transmission is not really important to verbalize with any of those teachings, where it is called mind transmission. And that is just basically depend upon that kind of just devotion or kind of faith. And the faith and devotion it is the sense of just belief and trust. And sense of belief and trust is just by knowing the kind of quality of that object of refuge, like knowing the quality of Buddha, how it is enlightened, and knowing the quality of like Dharma, how it is so perfect, and knowing the quality of Sangha, that how they have all these just the perfection of those qualities. And that way, when one just kind of really knows the quality, there is the sense of the devotion, is naturally just kind of arrives. And in that way, when one's mind just, where we say kind of single-pointed devotion, where there is no tiny bit of hesitation or kind of doubt, when mind just becomes very clear, and then you are experiencing the clarity nature of mind. Clarity nature of mind. And when you experience the clarity nature of mind, then you can also instantly see the emptiness nature there, because the clarity of mind is just kind of spacious and very pure, that there is no any conceptual thought. And where there is no any conceptual thought, it is just by its nature, it is just kind of spaciousness and also emptiness in nature. And when one just experience that, then emotions are gone. Emotions are instantly just gone. So in that way, those are more related with the just mind emptiness meditation, or like just the bhajan with the deities, or the like a substance, the texture, that directly cutting through meditation, and then there are kind of just many other methods, that when one's mind is in kind of such kind of intense, that that which kind of like eliminate all the emotions. So in that way, just one can work on how to deal with the just emotions. So maybe stop here, and if you have any questions, again, how to deal with the emotions. Yeah, have any questions? Yes.
I'm working on mindfulness and stilling the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a very busy mind. And so I do this all the time. When I'm walking down the street, when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm trying to be still and to be mindful. But there's part of me that has a fear that maybe I'm suppressing something. That, maybe I'm just pushing something down by creating silence there, and maybe that's not good. I'm not sure about that. So I want to see what you have to say about that.
That part is, that one not necessarily have to really suppress or just to give rise to something. On the other hand, which says, nothing really just to reject or accept, where in a way where one's mind, kind of just what is called, kind of relaxation. And the relaxation, that means, something not really intense. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that it is kind of wandering all over. That where have some sense of, kind of concentration. And the concentration is more related with the sense of, awareness. But it has to be nothing like kind of very rigid. Mind somehow just, aware, but at the same time some sense of, relaxation. So that kind of, the like combination or like kind of, union of the relax and the, just concentration. When it is just, kind of like follows into that, properly, then just one can naturally experience the actual, actual relaxation, and where it doesn't feel like kind of, just rigid or too distracted, or just really, doesn't feel like oneself is suppressing anything, or nothing just, allows to kind of, just become a busy mind. So it has to be just again the middle path. Yes?
What about feelings of like love? Can you control like feelings of love or affection?
Yeah, so that not necessarily, it has to control. Just it depends upon, like where, just in a sense where you have, just where you have some sense of some kind of love, which is kind of, like a more positive way or negative way. If it is more just kind of, positive, in generally, then relatively, it is just kind of, just okay. And but at the same time, just the sense of kind of, love that without kind of, conceptualization, and also just have a kind of, very, sense of, true and sincere, but not afflicted, or not having that kind of, like the attachment, without just, even though it is difficult, a love without attachment. It's kind of not easy, love is something that you like and you just care for it, but really not grasping, clinging, having that kind of attachment. And then, just it is just, okay. But then in the samsara, that where there is the kind of, samsaric mind, kind of just, love, and sometimes one doesn't just become aware of, the just, the future. And then, kind of like in the beginning one thought, oh, it is something good, But when you really get it, maybe just it is a kind of big problem. Know anything that really just kind of benefiting, and then that love may just transform into hatred. Then it becomes a problem. So the love also needs some wisdom. Yeah. And very skillful being. Otherwise one falls into kind of extreme. Then when it is extreme, then it is always, I think, always problem, Yeah. Any questions?